You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
Hi, welcome to Monday Night. It's on iCannabis Radio. I'm Georgia, and I'm in the studio with my producer, Chris. What up, Chris?
Hey, I'm not mic'd up.
We always do this. We should be quiet because Chris isn't feeling well.
No, I'm feeling good.
He had a little poopy-rhea over the Thanksgiving holidays, and we want to be sensitive to him. And I'm also here with Sam, who's on camera right now. What's up, Sam?
Hey, how are you?
Sam is the producer for Overgrow, the radio, and has been interning with us and helping us be fantastic and wonderful. We've got a great show tonight, which is, so dumb to start saying that. Why would anyone schedule and plan for a crappy show? You wouldn't do that. So I guess I'm going to stop saying we have a great show, and you guys are just going to assume it's going to be great, or if it's bad, you can let me know that too. But tonight we have John from MMD of Colorado, who is going to be doing his monthly grow tips for us, and we're going to be talking about the difference between growing indicas and sativas, and how to choose good growing medium. So we're going to talk about that. And also we, on the second half of the show, are going to talk with attorney Mike Cutler. He is a lawyer in the great state of Massachusetts. You guys all familiar with the great state of Massachusetts? Do you know why it's a great state? Because it became the 18th state in the United States to legalize medical marijuana. So we're going to talk to Mike about what that means for Massachusetts and, when their laws go into effect and how it's going to roll out and if and when it's going to roll out, because obviously in other situations we have seen laws passed and governors get in the way of enacting those laws. So I think that we are ready to call John. What do you think, Chris? He's nodding, which is always a good thing to do when you're on radio. So I can hear him. I think that's a good idea.
Hello.
Hey, John, this is Georgia. You're live on iCannabis Radio.
Hi, Georgia. What do you want?
I don't know. I thought we might talk about growing plants. What do you think?
Okay, well, I was about to put my 6 2-year-old children down for bed, but I'll stop what I'm doing and talk to you.
He thinks he's funny, everybody. He's not funny. In fact, you know what he said to me today? Do you guys want to know what he said to me today? He said that I look like a suburban housewife, and it was not said in a complimentary way.
I'm going to just leave that alone.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just telling everyone that tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the difference in growing indicas and sativas.
Yeah, well,
is there a difference?
That's an exciting topic because everybody loves their own particular. They have their own particular favorite strain, and so they do require a little bit of difference in care when you're growing them. I suppose the best way to look at this is that in general, so you have indicas, sativas, ruderalis, which nobody grows. That is what we used to call ditchweed, and hybrids. And there didn't really used to be many hybrids at all, and that's changed over the last 20 plus years. Primarily it started with what they were doing in Amsterdam, and it gave us the ability to breed for the first time. It was very difficult to do that prior. Anyway, so we have sativas and indicas we'll primarily focus on.
Okay. You don't want to focus on ditchweed?
No, I'd rather not.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't do much. So sativas naturally come from tropical climates in general, rainforests, jungles of like Thailand, Vietnam, Southeast Asia, and so they're used to a certain type of environment naturally. They also tend to take longer to flower, and so when you're raising sativas, if you have your 3 or hopefully soon to be 6 plants here in Colorado, that's right. Shout out for 64. If you're going to grow sativas, you might consider upping the humidity a little bit because naturally that's what they're used to. They like warmer temperatures. They tend to grow tall and gangly, much like my teenage son. And So they just want things to be a little different. Now, the nutrient needs really aren't that different. From strain to strain, they differ. But as far as looking at it from an indica versus sativa perspective, I haven't found there to be much difference. I mean, some sativas want more or less in the way of nutrients than other sativas, and that's also true for indicas. So you want to fine-tune your climate a little bit if you're trying to grow sativas. The same thing is true for indicas, which, unlike sativas, which have been brought up in primarily jungle areas, indicas are typically from sort of dry mountainous regions, Afghanistan, higher areas in India. India actually is interesting because they have jungles and mountainous regions, so you have sativas and indicas. But most places, in Southeast Asia, for example, are primarily sativas, and then you have other places like Afghanistan and Pakistan where indicas are dominant, and that is a much different growing climate. The soil is different, the humidity is different, the temperatures get much cooler at night in the high desert area than they do in jungles. So indicas tend to have adapted for that, and that's how they grow. Those are the primary differences you want to be aware of, is temperature and humidity. And it doesn't, at this point we're talking about tweaking your grow. I mean, the truth is you could run 40% humidity and 72 to 77 degrees, and you're going to do really well regardless. But the more you get to know a particular strain, the more you'll realize that it will do better the more you baby it and tweak its environment.
So for someone who has a home grow and only has 3 plants in flower, it's much easier to say, okay, I've got 3 of the same strain. I can just adjust the room. But what happens when folks have different strains, indicas and sativas? Should they split it down the middle? What would you suggest?
Yeah, you want to go middle of the road in that point. I mean, 40 to 50% humidity, it's hard to go wrong with. Much above that, I mean, it's true that in subtropical and rainforest climates, the humidity can go much higher than that. But indoors, you tend to run into botrytis or bud rot at some point. So you don't want to go too much above that, even with sativas. So if you've got a room that's mixed, kind of go down the middle. They generally do better with a little warmer temperatures in the middle to upper 70s. If you're enriching with CO2, you can carry that a lot higher. And then average humidity, 40% is pretty good. Here in Colorado, we deal with powdery mildew a lot, and that can be made worse by high humidity conditions.
Why is powdery mildew specific to whatever conditions we have in Colorado?
It's not unique to Colorado, but it is. It's not present everywhere, and I can tell you that. I used to own an organic farm back in the Midwest, and I never had this problem. I had heard about it, but I'd never actually seen it. And so here, even in my backyard, I've got some sort of ground cover. It's not ivy, but it's kind of like ivy. I've got that growing in this section near my back door, and I notice it gets powdery mildew, and I've never seen that. Until I moved out here, I hadn't actually seen it in person.
I have it in my outdoor garden, especially on my pumpkins.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like things are susceptible with big shady leaves. They seem to be the most susceptible.
Yeah. So when growing indicas and sativas, is there specific medium that you would suggest when growing different strains?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you're really gonna kind of geek out on it, and let's say you decided you're going to grow in soil, and you're going to make it organic soil, you might want to look at the differences in the soil content of a high desert region like Afghanistan versus the soil conditions of a rainforest or a subtropical region like Southeast Asia. But that's getting pretty detailed. Most people these days, there are some true soil growers, and when I say true soil, I mean a living food web exists inside the soil, and it's not a soilless media. Soilless media are becoming very popular, and that would include things like ProMix and there's several varieties out of them. Our Fafford is another. But there's no actual soil in there. It kind of looks like soil. It's got ground up pine bark and perlite and sometimes a little bit of cocoa. But there could be 5 or 6 different things, but none of it is actually soil. And so we refer to that as a soilless media. The other thing a lot of people are doing now is growing in cocoa. There's still a lot of rock wool growers out there for sure, but cocoa and the soilless medias tend to be the most popular right now, and they both would work equally well for sativas or indicas. You just have to treat them differently.
So tell us what Rockwell and cocoa are.
Well, rock wool is basically crushed stone that has been spun into fibers, and that's very popular in Europe and some other places. A lot of people use it here as well. And it looks a lot like fiberglass. Cocoa is just what it sounds like. It's the hulls of coconuts that have been processed. They take the hull and grind it up very fine and treat it, and people grow in it and have great success with that. But it's important to treat the different grow medias separately. You can't treat them all the same because the plant reacts differently in a soilless media, for example, than it does in cocoa.
Now, when someone's growing hydroponically, what does that mean in terms of the media?
So hydroponics technically refers to any media that does not have soil in it, that is dependent upon the grower to provide all the nutrients that the plant needs. Soil is not inert. It has minerals and nutrients already inside of it, and a plant's roots work to break those minerals down and absorb them. And the roots are aided by several biological processes that go on inside a soil container or in your garden, for example. Whereas hydroponics is the grow media exists simply to provide anchor and support for the plant. Everything that plant absorbs is given to it by the grower.
And so you're able to control every aspect and thus have more control over the outcome and the result of the growing plant.
Ideally, yes. That's the goal, yes. is to have as much control as possible over all the different steps. And cocoa is a little bit of both, although it is primarily a hydroponic media. It does have very, very small amounts of some naturally occurring minerals, but it so little that the plant would quickly die if you didn't add to it. So cocoa is primarily considered a hydroponic medium, along with rock wool, expanded clay pellets, and even the soilless medias like the ProMix that I mentioned earlier. It is made of an organic material, ground up bark and perlite and various other things, but it doesn't have any nutrients that it can give to the plant. So you as the grower have to provide nutrients either every time you feed or every other time you feed.
So I've been hearing a lot of feedback about people saying, gosh, you know what, I'm just curious about growing. Now that in Colorado I'm going to be able to have some plants and not really worry about it. But people are confused about where to start. And I think that our conversation about this whole conversation has just probably added to the confusion for people.
Probably.
Where do they go to get this kind of information? I mean, certainly it's wonderful to get a monthly grow spot from you, but that's not enough really to get people started. So what would you suggest would be a good place for people to start learning about how to grow marijuana?
Well, there are some good books. Jorge Cervantes, of course, is probably the standard bearer. He's the author of several books. But there are lots of them out there. The truth is it's the best thing to do is to sort of learn as you go, because no matter how detailed the book gets or how much explanation someone gives you, until you actually experience it, it's really hard to know. I would say start small, just 1 or 2. See how the plants react to what you're providing. And also, I think you have to go to a sort of a specialty store to buy a lot of this stuff. The people there are also a good resource for information. They can hold your hand a little bit and help guide you through some of the, especially the initial steps on how to do this, because it can be complicated. People think it's very easy until they try it.
Well, we're pretty partial to Noto Urban Garden Supply, one of our sponsors here at iCannabis Radio, and everyone there is not only really, really knowledgeable, but extremely helpful. Would you agree that that's a good place for people to get some information as well as some products?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great start.
Okay. Any parting words on something that you would want people to know as the end of your segment wraps up tonight?
I've probably mentioned this before, but the best piece of advice I could give any grower who's especially starting out is watch, manage and control your pH. If you do that, everything else will be much easier.
Excellent, excellent. Well, John, as always, we really appreciate your information. It's been wonderful. I know you've got some diapers to change. And thank you so much. We've been talking to John, the head grower at MMD of Colorado, and he's given us some tips on the different needs of indicas versus sativas and different types of growing media. The other thing that you can do is go visit our friends at Noto Urban Garden Supply, located at 1330 27th Street in downtown Denver, about 4.5 blocks northeast of Coors Field. They are a fantastic downtown hydroponics store. Not only do they have all of the supplies that'll really help you get started, but they have the knowledge to be able to walk you through anywhere from just starting out to answering some pretty technical and difficult questions. Growing can be really, really fun and exciting, but it can also be challenging. And so you definitely want to go to talk to some people who know what they're talking about. And that would be the folks at Noto Urban Garden Supply. You can check them out on the web at NODO Urban Garden Supply, Noto Urban Garden Supply. Again, they're located at 1330 27th Street in downtown Denver. You're listening to iCannabis Radio. I'm Georgia, and we'll be right back.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding, Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Well, Colorado talked it up, and we did indeed pass Amendment 64, which is what Gary Johnson was talking about. Speaking about passing legislation, making good new drug laws, we are going to call my friend Mike Cutler, attorney out of Massachusetts, and talk to him about the fantastic new laws that are just passed just a couple weeks ago in his great state. Mr. Cutler? Well, that was weird. We dialed and it sounded like somebody picked up, but maybe not. But Mike Cutler has been an attorney for quite a number of years and a marijuana activist as well, and has worked very hard in the legalization campaign. And so he's obviously extremely excited about their big win. It's a huge step forward for a large state like Massachusetts to be able to move in this direction. They are now a ringing. That sounds like a normal ring.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. This is Georgia. You're live on iCannabis Radio.
Oh, Georgia, it is a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, you are the founding mother of Colorado's leaders to marijuana reform, and I'm just so pleased to be with you tonight.
Mike, you know what? I just adore you. That is wonderful. I have to let people know that you're not saying that out of the goodness of your heart. You're saying that because as my friend, you were forced to say nice things to me on my show. So thank you so much. Jose.
I am just so proud of you and Warren. I mean, and we are so much standing on your shoulders and the rest of the country that it's just a special privilege to be talking to you. And I got to tell you, I've been watching a little bit of the show, and it is so cool to watch people openly discussing, growing
marijuana. I know.
Blah blah blah, and it's like the revolution is over. We won.
Yeah, It's interesting that you say that, Mike. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because when the state of Washington, a couple of the major counties in Washington state, when their city and district attorneys dismissed all the charges for minor possession, and then Colorado municipalities followed suit, it really felt very real to me that these people who have been criminalized for years are finally getting to have their lives back, and we are no longer making criminals out of people who are simply utilizing a harmless plant.
This is an incredibly important step for personal freedom and for democracy in this country. But people have let us out of this hideous, crazy, counterproductive policy. And it's just amazing how the people can get their shit together and get their stuff together and be able to put up with all the disinformation and the lies and the baloney and figure out the truth for themselves and then vote for it. It takes a lot of work to get the vehicles in place for the people to be able to do that, and that's the work that you and Warren have been doing. But it's a big step for democracy. And before I forget, Mark Sisti says hello.
Aww. Well, have a beer with Mark for me. We miss him.
I will be soon.
We miss him so much. Soon.
Good. What I thought you wanted to talk about what's here. I sort of had like three things I wanted to mention. I mean, it's your show, and you tell me what you want to talk about, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about the vote here, about the way we think medical is going to be rolling out, and then talking about the national scene a little bit.
Yeah, okay. That sounds fantastic. Let's start at the very, very beginning and let people know who you are. Who are you? What do you do? And why on earth would I be calling you to have you on my show?
Well, like Warren, I've been a lawyer, although a slightly bit longer than Warren. Doing, I've had primarily a criminal practice throughout my life, but I've also done a lot of civil litigation and done some licensing work. And I had a general practice for a while, and have been a member of the Normal Legal Committee for about 20 years, and networking through them to get help in doing advocacy in Massachusetts for helping to reform the laws and explaining to people in government that this is not the end of the world, that this is just another phase, and there is life after legalization. Yes, and you're also a relative newlywed? I am that, and I've got a wonderful partner here in Northampton where I live, and I've got a great partner as well in Dick Evans, the lawyer that I'm partnering with to represent dispensary clients, people applying for applications to become state licensed here in Massachusetts. Just a wonderful fellow as well. So I'm blessed with having good partners, and I've had some wonderful friendships, and yours and Warren's is one of the more important ones. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Enjoyed that too. So tell us a little bit about what has changed or what's happening in Massachusetts. Well, let me give you sort of the lead up to the vote. Sure. We did decrim 4 years ago, and it won by 65%, and it carried in every single city and town, 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts except 2. Wow. This year, medical marijuana still fell down in 1 town, but otherwise it swept the rest of the state. Excellent. We didn't have the same margin. We only got 63% of the vote for medical compared to the 65%, but interestingly, both this year and in 2008, we ran 3 points ahead of President Obama. Nice. Exactly. So once again, we lead that. But another thing that's evolving here is we have non-binding ballot questions that can be in Senate and rep districts, state Senate districts. They're not binding. They're on election day and give legislators a sense of what's going on. In 2010, 180,000 Massachusetts voters voted on legalization, and it passed by 59% every city and town. Wow. This year, it was on the ballot in 240,000 voters, 66 cities and towns, passed in every single city and town, average margin 66%. Wow. So this is sort of the backdrop for our vote and the news that we have here in Massachusetts. Wow. So what do you think is in the voters' mind in Massachusetts that has legalization passing by such a large margin? I think people are voting with their experience. I mean, to look at the 2008 decrim vote, every single DA, every single the governor, the attorney general, even pot-smoking John Kerry, our U.S. Senator, came out against decrim. All the smart guys, all the public and safety establishment said, we know better. We know what's going on. Trust us. Everything's going to, life will change for the worse if you vote for this. It was polling right before the election very closely by about a point or two, too close to call, and they blew the doors off at 65-35.
Wow.
I think that people in Massachusetts have known for a long time that marijuana prohibition is a counterproductive fraud,
Yep.
and it brings far more harm than benefit, and certainly far more harm than marijuana use does, and that they're done. They're done with the war on their kids. They're done with policemen screwing around with this bullshit, not going after with this minor stuff, and not going after major violators and real criminals. And this is a time of recession. We want to get that money back from the criminals. We want to we're ready to have a real economy in this, and see if we can make it work. I mean, that last step may be a little bit far for many Massachusetts voters, but I think that people understand the revenue piece of this as well.
I think that's a big motivator these years, and it ought to be. It ought to be a motivator. I mean, we have an untapped resource.
I'm less concerned about the amount of tax revenue that it'll generate, and it certainly will generate more than it's more the idea that we're taking police out of people's lives and the cost, although all of those ancillary costs of doing that, and we're creating jobs, we're raising revenues and underutilized commercial space, we're raising property values. It's going to be raising local income taxes, the local revenues to help out for local service providers. I mean, it's just it's good for the economy. Let me put it that way. We just got done with a jobs campaign. Marijuana legalization is part of the jobs campaign.
Wow, excellent. So how will medical marijuana look in Massachusetts?
We see it rolling out in 3 phases. The first phase is going to be a caregiver phase, which will involve starting slow and patients and caregivers finding each other, and that's going to be phase 1. Phase 2 is the state licensing process. That's where the first thing the state has to do is adopt regulations for defining how the dispensaries will operate within the outer limits of the initiative, and defining how the licensing competition is going to work. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a lot of jockeying for that, because there's only going to be 35 licenses in Massachusetts. Arizona, which has the same population as Massachusetts, just did their licensing process for 126 licenses. So we're only going to have, for the same amount of people, 35 licenses.
We have more than 200 in Denver alone.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. So that's the way they wanted. That's the way it's written. That's the way that they felt that it polled best. That's what we had. Ours was written by pollsters as opposed to legislators or anything else. But that's what we have. And but phase 2 is going to be the operation of these getting them up and off the ground and running. And phase 3 is going to be legalization. And the people who get the medical licenses are going to be grandfathered, I suspect, into the ground floor on legalizing. And that's the way we expect it to roll out. And I should say that we have a legalization bill that was introduced last session, got hearings the whole 9 yards, and was sponsored, I like to think, in a nice political touch, by 4 women legislators. Those were the people behind the sponsoring of the legalization bill last time, and that same bill is being filed again this session this month for the next month for the next 2-year session of the legislature, and it's written by my colleague, my partner, Dick Evans.
Excellent. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's wonderful.
And the other huge forces behind legalization, apart from the fabulous experience of you people out west, is that all of New England seems to be going green.
Yes.
I think there's a race between Rhode Island and Maine to see which one is going to legalize first. I don't know which one to bet on, but it ain't going to be 2 years from now. I think that one of those 2 states are going to do it very soon.
I think that's exciting.
Secondly, in Vermont, the Vermont governor sought Normal's endorsement for his reelection campaign, and he won. Yep. So, and they just permitted their first 2 dispensaries, so I think they're headed in the right direction. And so that's Vermont. In Connecticut, the medical bill that passed this spring in Connecticut came from the governor's office. It came from the governor's office. So this was not so leadership is on board with reform in Connecticut. It's very cool down there. And,
hey, Mike, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. We're going to take a quick commercial break. If I could have you hold on for just a second, we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on nationally. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
All right, just hold on. We'll be right back. We'd like to thank our sponsors up in the mountains in Frisco, Colorado. You know our friends, Medical Marijuana of the Rockies. They're your mountain source for meds. They have some of the best clones in the state, or immature plants, as Warren would make me say, to make sure that they are in full compliance with their numbers. But they are located off of exit 203 in Frisco, off of I-70. It's ski season, and you know that you're going to pass their store every single time you go to the mountains. So make sure you stop by and you tell Aaron and Jerry that you heard about them on iCannabis Radio. Also, check out their website, mmrockies.com, Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, mmrockies.com. They have their current strain selection and their immature plants that are available, and they update their website every single day. Again, that's Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, located in Frisco, Colorado. You're listening to iCannabis Radio. We're on the phone with Mike Cutler from Massachusetts, and we will be right back.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
You're listening to Georgia Edson on iCannabisRadio.com.
Scott Taylor has an extremely sexy voice, and when he says my name, it kind of makes me giggle a little bit. Mike, we're back in the air. Are you still there with us?
Yes, George, I'm here.
Thank you. See, I giggled with you when you did it too. Thank you. So you were just talking about how Connecticut's medical marijuana law came from the governor's office, and so there's definitely, there certainly is a recognition that politicians have to take a stance on medical marijuana and on marijuana. It's an issue in people's minds, even in what we consider conservative communities like Arkansas. I don't know that I ever would have thought that Arkansas would have been, one of the first half of the states to at least vote on a medical marijuana. Yes, it didn't pass, but that's pretty progressive for Arkansas.
They did 49%. It almost won.
You can't sneeze at that. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So you're seeing New England start to make the big push towards smart politics.
It's certainly on marijuana policy. I think there's a lot of support in these different states. I was just going to close in New Hampshire, where Mark Sisti has voted medical twice. It's been vetoed by the outgoing governor. This time, this election cycle, both the Democrat and the Republican candidate for governor supported medical marijuana.
Yep.
So they're going to do medical pretty soon. And Massachusetts has been, our political leadership is way behind where the voters are. So our governor and our legislative leaders their default is to be hostile to this stuff.
Right.
But, they're not stupid, and they are politicians. And I think they're going to be able to figure out which way the wind's blowing and realize that it would be foolish to take an oppositional position on this. And maybe at some point in time they'll get out ahead about this and be something like leaders. It could happen.
It definitely could. I always tell stories about my dad, and Mike, my father. He's a very conservative Republican, and he can't understand why politicians aren't making smart decisions when it comes to legalizing marijuana. It confuses him. He lives in the state of Illinois, and we're going to talk about Illinois a little bit later in the show. He is regularly contacting his legislators because he feels like they're missing out on a great opportunity to lower the unemployment rate and all the things that you talked about in the economic impact that legalization has. Other states need that as well.
There's no question in this economy. There's been some hopeful signs, but there's I mean, this is a nice retail business where you don't necessarily have to have a college education to get ahead in it. I think it's just a marvelous opportunity for lots of small business people eventually. I mean, Massachusetts has 35 licenses and sort of making a swing for bigger than smaller. But I think once people get over themselves and they stop treating marijuana like toxic waste and just another commodity, I think things will be even better for the economy.
Absolutely, and it's really sad to me. I was reading some quotes today by New York's fine Governor Cuomo, and really the idea of the negative impact of marijuana legalization far outweighs any of the positives is outdated. That's old jargon. No one believes that any longer. No one thinks. I mean, you started off by saying something about saving the kids. No one thinks that we're harming our children anymore. They really don't. And even in the '64 campaign, the mothers who were against Amendment 64 told these horror stories of their kids in addiction. Marijuana didn't make them drug addicts. Marijuana didn't make them drug addicts. And I'm so sorry that they and their families have gone through that. And I would never want anyone to go through the perils of a child who suffers horrible addiction. I mean, everyone knows. I mean, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. My concentration is addictions. That's what I went to school for, and I had the utmost empathy and sympathy for people going through that. It's not marijuana's fault, and legalization isn't going to make your child not an addict to drugs.
Well, the data shows us in the states that have medicalized and decriminalized that use rates have not gone up. And the other lesson that we have of prohibition is that kids, almost universally, not just in Brookline where my son was raised, but I'm sure in Kansas and Indiana, where the revolution in marijuana may be a little bit later coming than in Colorado and New England, is that the experience of parents and adolescents across the country is that they have much easier access to marijuana than alcohol.
Yeah.
Because one is regulated, the other one's not. So if you care about kids, you're four square for legalization.
Well, and it sounds so sensical to us, but people really struggle with, my child or my brother or my cousin or my aunt had horrible addiction problems. Well, people have horrible addiction problems to all kinds of things that are not illegal and they're not prohibited. The rehab centers are full of people addicted to prescription drugs and alcohol all over this country. I mean, that's the cornerstone of the rehab market, is making sure that they get those alcoholics.
Well, it's not just that those are the primary consumers of addiction services. It's the foolish diversion of addiction services.
Right.
The kids who are, who use maybe once or twice a week, but the once or twice a week they got caught, and they have to go into an abstinence-based referral into a treatment program in order to avoid getting a criminal record. That's just besides the stigmatizing the kid and giving them this weird message that ordinary and responsible use maybe not good for a kid, but that he's got to be abstinent forever, or else that sent a message to kids that kids know is not real and not right. And it's, as much as we need to keep this away from kids, the benefit of regulation, we can't treat every bit of use as abuse, which is what's going on in too many states, and it's diverting treatment resources to treat people that don't really have a problem from people who really do need addiction treatment services.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and we're definitely preaching to the choir. Our listeners are cheering as we're having this conversation, but I don't know how to say it enough times because our legislators still struggle with whatever's scary and wrong. A bunch of our Congress folks from Colorado got together and sent a letter saying, please respect the Amendment 64, the rights of our voters, the voices of our voters. And Mike Kaufman, one of our congressmen, said, I don't believe in marijuana legalization. I think it's a bad idea. However, I support what the voters say. And all I kept thinking was, I wonder what he believes. I wonder what he knows about about marijuana, about the plant, about hemp, because to start off by saying I don't believe in legalization, to me means he's still full of misinformation.
Well, I don't know why he won't take 55% of his constituents' word for it.
Right.
What do you think you're smarter than they are? I don't know. He's got to live with himself.
Well, and again,
more than that, he's got to live with on his reelection with those comments to his constituency. If they think that's who they want to be represented by, then that's fine. But if somebody else wants to be what 55% of his constituents say, and they want to pick that up, he might lose next time.
Well, and that's what's changing. What's changing is it used to be really easy, what a politician should be for and against. I'm for, kissing babies, and I'm for jobs, and and I'm definitely for people going to church and not drinking on Sundays and all of those kinds of things. But now it's not so cut and dry. We have turned into a nation of people who really don't drink the Kool-Aid. We aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing. Reefer madness is dead. And so now you've got to prove, politician, that you can make a decision based on facts and based on thinking things through. And then if we end up agreeing in the end, I'll vote for you. If we don't, I will campaign hard against you.
Well, they've got to know that they've got to be accountable. We like to say that gravity ended. Gravity used to be drugs were bad. Yeah. And suddenly, maybe there's no gravity, and people are just weightlessly trying to figure out what's going on when the data is clear, and it's really time for people to go with the truth. And it's sort of like this campaign that we've just seen between the sort of the fact-based campaign that the president was used and this Fantasyland campaign that Romney used.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally people just didn't think it added up, and that's why they went for the president. They think that fundamentally marijuana policy, to everyone's demonstrable experience, doesn't work. And, you can pontificate and try to remember when gravity was down and all these things, you could say them and you can get away with them, but it's not true, and everybody knows it. The emperor has no clothes.
That's right. I've talked a lot about election night since election night because it was a monumental life event in so many people's worlds, not just in Colorado, not just in Washington State, but kind of across the country. I think people see this as being hope for the future. Massachusetts vote the same way. But, the first thing that I did, Mike, when we realized that Amendment 64 had passed, we were at an election night party with all of the Amendment 64 people who had volunteered hours and hours and hours of their time. And, of course, we had our son there, and he was really excited because he knows what this means. And I got very kind of melodramatic and emotional, but the reality was that, and I truly believe this, is that I think now my son is going to be raised in what I consider a safer, smarter world. That to me is one step closer to my son being raised in an environment where people's personal freedoms are respected, and I don't have to worry about his rights being trampled on.
Well, all I can say to that, Georgia, is that a parent's job one is protecting their kids. Right. And you scored the goal. You really protected your kid. You went out there and you were a leader and you got it done. And I think you should be the proudest mother that there is in Colorado.
Well, thank you. I lots and lots of people worked really, really hard and really, really diligently. Mason Tvert, who was one of the co-chairmen of the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol campaign, was just voted High Times Magazine Freedom Fighter of the Year.
It should be. And I know there were other people, but I just think in terms of the statement about protecting your kids, I just think that's an eloquent reason for parents to be involved in this movement. I once met the guy who was the head of the Canadian Parliament study on the drug policy reform studies. Mm-hmm. He's in their upper house, which is like the Lords. He's like this rich guy, above the fray of economics and everything else. And he led this commission against a lot of public, skepticism that found that marijuana should be legalized. And he put his public integrity into this. And I met him at a conference. I asked him, why did you pick this issue to make such a big deal about? And he said, "Oh, easily. I did it for my kids."
Wow. Wow. It's a great place for us to end on too as well, Mike. You are, I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much for all the work that you have done, not just to bring Massachusetts to where it is today, but to bring us all closer to where we want to be, which is to see marijuana and hemp legalized in the United States. And you have worked tirelessly, and we so appreciate all that you do. And I hope that you'll be willing to come back on the show and give us some updates on what's going on with you and what's going on with Massachusetts.
Glad to do it, Georgia. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Same to you.
You're listening to iCannabis Radio. We were talking to Mike Cutler, attorney out of Massachusetts. He is wonderful. Check him out. We are going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. Thanks for
Let's
listening.
face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706. Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. runongrass.com.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. That was what a great night. We had a great segment with John, and then a wonderful talk with Mike Cutler. My friend Roger's in the chat room tonight, and he and I are really struggling with kind of figuring out the chat room a little bit. So if you guys have been posting in there and I'm not responding, I apologize. It's just one of those nights. But anyhow, we always suggest that you at least check in with us in the chat room. It makes us feel like someone's out there paying attention to what we have to say. Plus, it's kind of fun. But I have Sam in the studio with me tonight. What's up, Sam?
Hey, Georgia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You just came back from a little trip back east to Pennsylvania. How was that?
It was really good. I love seeing my family. When I flew into Philadelphia, I saw polluted air and not very nice buildings, and then the city, and then flying back, you see mountains and blue sky, and I don't see the air. Which is good.
I don't see the air, exactly.
I like it.
Well, welcome back. I'm glad that you had a nice time. You know, sometimes we have to leave in order to appreciate what we've got when we're here.
Oh, yes.
So I'm flipping through my pieces of paper because I want to talk about a couple of things. In particular, I always have to bring up a parenting issue when there's a parenting issue in the news to bring up. Sometimes I just bring up a parenting issue because, and since we just talked a little bit about parenting and legalization and what that means when Mike was on the phone, there's a mom out of Oregon who has gotten a lot of press recently. Her 7-year-old daughter has leukemia. And the 7-year-old is a medical marijuana patient now in Oregon. And her leukemia is in remission. And the mother really attributes her, and I'm going to use the quote-unquote cure. Mom says she's cured of cancer. She attributes that to her cannabis.
Isn't that isn't leukemia blood cancer?
I don't know a lot about leukemia, actually. I'm sorry to say.
It's lung. Oh, it's lung?
No.
I think it is a blood cancer. Cannabis?
Well, I mean, it's really normal that people use cannabis to ward off some of the horrible side effects of chemotherapy. The appetite that you lose, wasting, all of those kinds of things. Cannabis has definitely been known to help with. There's also a lot of research, unfortunately it's more anecdotal than not, showing that tumors have been shown to slow down. Their growth has been shown to slow down and shrink using cannabis. There's also been some research around melanoma, skin cancer, and the use of topicals. But unfortunately, because our laws are so screwed up, we can't do real research on that. But nonetheless, there has been some clear help in
blood or bone marrow.
Blood or bone marrow cancer. Okay.
That's wow.
Yeah. So clearly there's been some help in this little girl, this 7-year-old, and her mom is, who is also a medical marijuana patient, gives her marijuana pills to help her. And the father does not live in Oregon. Oregon is obviously a medical marijuana state. The father does not live in Oregon. He lives in, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to go through this quickly enough, but he lives in another state. And he is pretty adamantly opposed to his 7-year-old using marijuana. The mom says that as a mother, I'm going to try anything before she can potentially fall on the other side of the cancer, meaning get sick or die. The little girl's father lives in North Dakota. Thank you. And he contacted child welfare officials, the police, and the little girl's oncologist. He believes that she was, quote unquote, stoned out of her mind. All she wanted to do was lay in bed and play video games. The father believes that she, because she's not terminally ill, she's going to get over this illness, and he's so worried about her brain development. And we know that there has been some research showing that there has been the potential of some brain development abnormalities, as well as some potential IQ loss with early marijuana use. And I think that this is a tough one. I think that this is really difficult. I absolutely applaud anyone who's willing to try alternative medicines, especially when they've tried everything and nothing has worked. Again, what's difficult for me in this circumstance is that you've got two parents who have very different opinions about what makes the most sense for their daughter, and the father believing that marijuana could be harmful. It could be harmful. I agree. Guess what else is harmful? Chemotherapy. Really freaking harmful.
Which one's more?
Yeah, I would take the potential harm caused by marijuana.
Radiation.
How old is
versus
this girl?
She's 7. She's 7 years old. So
Chemotherapy at 7.
Well, she's got leukemia. That's leukemia.
Yeah.
That's what's going to cure her leukemia. I feel for this dad, and I appreciate where he's coming from. But your daughter's already going through chemotherapy.
She's already going.
She's already gone through chemotherapy, and marijuana was used in adjunct with chemotherapy. If your daughter's going to suffer from some long-term effects, it's going to be because they gave her toxins, lots and lots and lots of toxins that we know kill your cells. It's what it does. That's why they give you chemotherapy, it's to kill your cells, because they're hoping that they kill a lot more cancer cells than they do healthy cells. So I appreciate this dad wanting to be a really good dad. I hope he gets the information that he needs so that if he's going to decide to let his daughter go through chemotherapy, that he's going to also let her be relieved of her side effects by marijuana. What was interesting about this article that I read, it was a couple of paragraphs. It printed out on less than one page, but the comments were 22 pages long. 22 pages of angry, intense comments. For the most part, people were really supportive of this mom. But a lot of them were very, again, we get back to that, where do people get their information? And they're willing to take a few nuggets. If I say something, someone's going to walk away and take that as fact. And then they're going to quote it, and they're going to say, this is the truth. When George Edson just said it, It may not be the truth. Don't trust me. Do your own research. Figure it out.
Don't be a follower.
Don't be a follower. Don't be a follower, especially if it's something as important as your kid's health. But the quote unquote facts that people use to refute using cannabis to aid in cancer patients is scandalous in my mind. I mean, it is so sad to me. It is so sad to me. We have someone in the chat room saying medical marijuana over chemo any day. And I don't pretend to be a physician or play one on TV or really know all that much about cancer. What I know is that there was a physician in Oregon who believed that marijuana could actually help this 7-year-old. And if this physician was not working with the best intent of this little girl's life in his mind, then he should lose his license. So I choose to believe, as I'm sure that mom did, was that all this physician wanted to do was ensure that this little girl gets better. So.
And she is better?
That didn't lie to her.
And you have a doctor that doesn't lie to her, absolutely. And someone that the dad can talk to who's not lying to him either. Right. And yeah, she's in remission right now, and that's fantastic. And,
yeah, it's really good.
And and we're all reeling from the death of Cash Hyde and 4 years old and such a warrior and has done so well and we all watched him do better with cannabis. We really, really did. And we also watched him do poorly without it. And so is that a scientific research? It's not. It's not scientific research, but it's what we've got right now. And, as a parent, I would try all kinds of things.
I think it's enough for me.
Right? I know. So yeah, it's, I feel for this mom. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do when you're divorced parents trying to parent a child and one of you lives halfway across the country but you definitely want to talk those things through first. You definitely want to talk those things through first. Couple other sort of interesting things as we're winding up our evening tonight. I talked a little bit about Illinois, medical marijuana in Illinois. There's going to be a special veto session that could make legal weed a reality, says the Huffington Post. It's considered a lame duck session, but Illinois lawmakers will be scrambling to decide the fate of several hot-button issues, including possibly legalizing medical marijuana when they reconvene in the State House tomorrow. Part of House Bill 30 includes the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act, allowing qualified patients under medical care to buy and use up to 1.5 ounces of marijuana during a 2-week period. According to the Pro-Pot nonprofit group, legislative support for legalizing medical marijuana in the State House of Representatives has fallen just shy of majority in the previous roll calls on the matter. The state approved the medical marijuana bill in Illinois in 2009. The bill's sponsor, Skokie Democrat Republican Lou Lang, told the Northwest Indiana Times this month that 92 of his House colleagues have said they hope to see the bill passed, but are hesitant to publicly vote in its favor due to, quote-unquote, political reasons. That's what we were just talking about in our segment with Mike, is that, it's not easy anymore to say, oh, I'm anti-drug, because people know that marijuana is not equivalent to heroin. Currently, 16 other states have legalized medical marijuana under doctor's supervision, as well as now Massachusetts and the District of Columbia, of course. For those with a qualifying medical condition in Illinois, it's a pretty exciting possibility. So speaking of exciting possibilities, we've got a great week coming up on iCannabis Radio. Tomorrow, well, you guys know what tomorrow is. It's Tuesday. And what does Tuesday mean? We talk about sex and we talk about pot on Sex Pot Radio. Jenny Cush, as always, has an exciting and albeit racy show. And as we get into the holidays, it gets a little bit more exciting and a little bit more racy. And then you know what? It's Wednesday night. We are 1 week away from IDAB Radio's monthly show, so next week they will be on. Thursday, of course, we have the Hemp Connoisseur video magazine on from 4 to 5 p.m., and of course, Overgrow the Radio is on from 7 to 9. Next week we have Glass Monday because it's the first Monday of the month, and we also are going to be doing a special segment for AIDS Day as well, and I'll keep you posted on that. We'd like to thank our sponsors: Mile High Wellness, Noto Urban Garden Supply, Edson Maitland and Mats, Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, Medical Marijuana 101, Run on Grass, as well as our brand new sponsor, Cuffle Collimore and Company. Please visit them at lifeboatmedical.com, LIFEBOAT medical.com, or Cuffle, KUFFEL, Collimore, COLLIMORE.com. Check them out. If you are a dispensary owner or you travel the world, you can get your insurance needs filled. We have had a great night tonight. I want to thank Sam for being on. Thank you, Sam.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Of course. Welcome back. Chris, hope you're feeling better. And I'm here with my co-host Diesel, and we will see you next Monday. Have a great week. Bye-bye.